Assalamu alaikum all. On behalf of Al Sirat Academy, I welcome you all in the sixth session of Amazing Stories in Quran. Tonight's session is about Prophet Jesus Islam and Lady Maryam. I will hand it over to Brother Mustajab, who is doing amazing effort in presenting these on weekly basis. Please welcome him with a loud salawat.
اللهم
صل على
صل
محمد
على
وآل محمد
محمد
وعجل فرجهم.
وآل محمد وعجل. Assalamu alaikum everyone. Eid Mubarak to everyone. Today is the day where Imam Ali was formally announced in front of over 100,000 people that he is our Lord, he is our Mawla. So congratulations to everyone, and that is where it was evident that the path of Sirat al-Mustaqim is there. And to the Lord of our time, Imam Zamana, may Allah hasten his appearance, and congratulations to the Imam of our time on the day of Eid al-Ghadir. May Allah accept our prayers, and may Allah make all of you guys wise and helpful to the cause of Islam as it needs to be presented in modern day. So let's start today's story. Today's story is about Lady Maryam, or Lady Mary, as we call it in the West where we live, and Prophet Jesus, or who we call as Prophet Isa alayhi salam. So let's start today's story. And I'll move the screen. Okay, so where are the stories in the Quran? So it's in chapter 3, Al Imran. That's the progeny where it goes from. Chapter 5, table, Maida. It is name, also relates to the miracle that we will see. And chapter 19, Maryam. So there is a whole chapter in Quran that is named after Lady Maryam, that proves the infallibility of Bibi Maryam, how pious and one of the great ladies of the world in the hereafter she is. And her son, Prophet Jesus, who Allah choose to have a unique birth in the world, and how he will come at the end of the time, and how no matter how evil try to extinguish the flame that Allah has parted towards us for guidance, they fail to do so. And the person who betrayed the Prophet Jesus was burned in its own flame. So what does the Quran say? So Quran says, when the angels told Maryam, Mary, that Allah had given her the glad news of the birth of her son. Now let me move this to the side and I can see it. So the birth of his son, Prophet Jesus or Prophet Isa, was announced to Lady Maryam, and he calls his word whose name would be Messiah. So he is in Quran, he's called Messiah. His name is Isa, son of Maryam, as we call it, Isa ibn Maryam, who would be a man of honor in his life and the life to come. So he would be in his life and the life after him that would come, he would be a man of honor, and who would be one of the ones nearest to Allah, who would speak to the people while in his cradle and preach to them when he would be a grown-up man, who would be one of the righteous ones. Maryam said, how can there be a son for me when no mortal has touched me? The angels replied, that is how Allah creates whatever he wants. When he decides to do something, he just orders it to be, and it becomes into existence. So we know that the whole world, the galaxy, planet came into existence when Allah wanted it to come into existence. And when Allah wants something, it happens. So from there are a couple of points in this ayah, in this verse of the Quran, is that Allah has announced that he is one, Prophet Isa, Prophet Jesus is nearest to Allah, he is one of the honor, and that he would also speak in his cradle. So it clearly says that he would speak in his cradle. That means he was a young baby when it is not expected of him to speak, he spoke. And then also that he would be preaching as he grows older. And then Lady Mariam said, look, I'm not married, I don't have a husband, how can it be? It is said in our traditions that Archangel Jibrail came and he blowed um, towards Maryam in his bosom, and because of that, Jesus was given birth. Now, there are a lot of traditions in other contexts where it says that Jesus was born after a normal, how we were born after 9 months. We are born from our mother, but in our narrations, it says that Jesus was born in 9 hours instead of 9 months. Um, that is what it was. Also, one of the miracles. So, a little bit about Lady Mariam. Lady Mariam, who is known in the West here as Virgin Mary, is daughter of Imran, who was from the progeny of, that's why it's mentioned in the chapter Al Imran, who was from the progeny of Prophet David, or Dawood as we call it. Her mother was a noble and pious woman. So Lady Mariam's or Virgin Mary's mother, she was also very pious. And she actually prayed to Allah that she wanted a kid that could service the Holy Land. At that time, there was a place called Baitul Maqdis. That's where she wanted her kid to go and dedicate to service. And she was hoping for a son to be born, but Allah had other things in plan. And as we saw the miracles that came, she was blessed with a daughter, but what she had promised to Allah, she went and she took her daughter to Baitul Maqdis and prayed to Allah that Allah keeps her and her daughter from the inducement of the guiles of Satan, or Shaitan as we call it. This prayer was also answered by Allah. So Allah answered the prayers. Allah listened to that prayer of the mother of Lady Maryam. So when she was brought to Bethel Maqdis, now there was difference arose between the people and the trustees who were looking after that holy place about who would bring the newborn child. So everybody wanted to bring up the child, that we will look after the child. So they came to a point, they said, okay, we can't make a decision, so we will draw a lot. In that lot, the name that was pulled out was the name of Prophet Zachariah, and Prophet Zachariah is mentioned, and he was to take, and incidentally he was the prophet, and obviously Maryam being a pious lady, daughter of a pious mother from the progeny of Ali Imran, she was taken the responsibility under Prophet Zachariah. So when a Lady Maryam came of age, Prophet Zachariah set aside a chamber in Baitul Maqdis. So he there was an exclusive place for Lady Mary. Um, and Lady Maryam then got, and I'm using the names interchangeably so everyone knows that she is also called Maryam, she is called Virgin Mary, people call her Mary as well. Same with Isa and other prophets, so that you know what, if your parents say it in Urdu or Hindi, or someone else says it, you know what's called in English. So she had infallibility, and she was given by Allah the designation of the most superior woman of her time. That was her designation at the time. And when Lady Maryam was in sanctuary, a special place for worship to Allah, Archangel Jibrail came there, and he did not came in the form as we see it. And I'll see if I have a picture. So there it is. So I've depicted a picture of when Jibrail came into that sanctuary. He did not came as an angel. He came in, and I've just put the wings in just to show he's an angel. We don't know if they have wings or they fly with the blessing. We know that Prophet Solomon had the wind in his control and he could fly his carpet. So you definitely don't need wings to fly. So when Jibril came, he came as a handsome man, and he gave that good news. We recited the Quran, and she said, how is it possible? Jibreel said, there is nothing which is impossible for Allah. He has power over all things. He creates as he would wish, and whenever Allah wills to do a certain thing, that happens at once with his will. So at that time, Lady Maryam felt herself that she is now carrying the child. She felt that she is pregnant, she's carrying the child, and she became embarrassed and frightened. She was pondering over as to how that when the birth happens, what will happen, what will people think, and she was worried. Although she knew that she was one of the most, and people knew that she was most dignified of all the women in the world and had an unflinching faith and belief in Allah. So she had her strong faith in Allah. She knew that Allah would get her through. She knew quite well that that Almighty Allah would help her in all moments. And this is a lesson for us as well. If we are going through a difficult time, we should remember that if all the prophets, all the virtuous people, they have kept faith, and you are tested, but then you are rewarded. So but what she was afraid was that the people would still say bad things. As a human, you would be hurt, and there were Jewish people who would say things. So that's what she was worried about, the accusations. So we know Jesus was born, and she resigned herself to the will of Allah and entrusted all her affairs to Allah. Um, and when the time of the birth came, she reached a dried date palm tree. And without, there was no one to help her, there was no one attending. She gave birth to a handsome child all by herself. The only thing she uttered in her grief was, would that I were to die before all this could happen, and that I were to be among those who are completely forgotten. But suddenly, Lady Maryam got heard a welcome voice of baby Jesus. It was as though somebody was consoling her. And do not be sad, the Almighty Allah has erupted a proclait from near your feet. So at that time, she drank the water that came under his feet. She shook the old date palm tree, and the ripe dates fall down, and she ate them, and she got all rid of her worries, and she was satisfied. Um, let's look at what happens next. So the miracle of the speaking infant, as we know from the ayah in the Quran, that Jesus spoke when he was an infant in his cradle. Um, so Lady Maryam, she was asked by her Lord that if she found people making false accusations against, she would tell them that she had vowed before Allah to observe fast. As such, she would not talk to them. What did she do? She took her dear son, brought him to Beit al-Maqdis. As soon as she arrived there, the Jews saw her. They started saying bad things, calling her strange names. Oh, Maryam, you have done a very strange thing. Your mother was not that one, and your father was not that things. And all of these things, they started doing it. So the Maryam, what did Lady Mary do? She just pointed it towards baby Jesus. And she asked him, and that he would answer the questions. And at that time, with the infinite power of Allah came into action, and the newborn child then started speaking. He said about his exalt. Now, instead of Lady Mary saying anything, it was baby Jesus who started saying. He said, I am the servant of Allah. My Lord has showered me his mercy and benevolence. He has sent me as the prophet of Allah. He has designated me as the most exalted and the most blessed. As long as I am going to be alive, I have been ordained by my Lord, the Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to offer salah prayers, to pay zakat, which is to pay the poor, and to treat my mother in the most respectable manner. That is what baby Jesus said. So, thus, Prophet Isa, Prophet Jesus, introduced himself to the critics of his mothers in those words and established the infallibility of her most exalted mother. So now, when he spoke, everyone knew it was a miracle, and he is no ordinary child, and she is no ordinary woman. While the people who were in Beit al-Maqdis were aware of her status, but it was the Jewish people at the time who were there, they were calling out these things. So by the child saying this happened. So the fact, the birth of a child under this most extraordinary circumstances is a great miracle itself. And such a child could have never been born of a mother who was not virtuous herself. So it proves that because he was a miracle baby, he could not be, her mother has to be virtuous. And similarly, Allah, who made the newborn child speak from his cradle, was still a greater miracle than giving birth to him. So see, we know a child is given birth by a mother, but him speaking was still um, a greater miracle um, to him without him being born without a father. Now, as we go and look at it, and the slide change again. But despite all of the clear proofs and the divine signs that a child is speaking and he's born in 9 hours, and he's born without a father, the Jews continue committing the sins and saying silly and unworthy things. They stuck their necks in the noose of ignorance, and all of the same with remorse. They had no remorse and they started doing all of those things. So the news of this went across the country, and when astrologers of the day came to know of the birth of such an infallible child, infallible means who cannot commit a mistake, who cannot do anything wrong. So the 14 Masumins are infallible, all the prophets are infallible. So, and he was a prophet, so he was an infallible child that came from all over the country. So they came, they paid their tribute, respect, and bought presents for him. But as at that time there was a Jewish emperor, and his name was Herodotus. He learned about the birth of Prophet Jesus. He heard about the miracle, how people are going and now giving gifts and paying their respects. So he got terribly frightened, as he feared that some unexpected circumstances might lead to the downfall of his kingdom. So, like all kings, like the Pharaoh, like all other kings that we have seen and heard about, he was worried about his kingdom. So he plotted to kill Prophet Isa, Prophet Jesus, baby Jesus as time, as to save his empire from any possible mishap. So he said, okay, I have to kill him because otherwise, because he is a prophet, and when a prophet comes, everyone will listen to him and my kingdom would be gone. So when Lady Mary, Maryam, sensed the danger of the life of her son, she took baby Jesus and she took him away to Egypt. So you can see in the picture Lady Maryam's flight to Egypt with the young prophet Isa. So she took the child who was Prophet Isa to Egypt from Beit al-Maqdis. In Egypt, Prophet Isa was brought up by her mother until the time he grew up and reached the age of 30 years. So from the time he escaped to Egypt until he turned 30 years of age, he remained in Egypt with her mother. The Almighty Allah then revealed upon Prophet Isa the divine book, which is known as Injil or Evangel. So or as we call it, Bible right now. So the Injil was revealed to Prophet Isa, Jesus, and the Almighty Allah, after he revealed the book, Prophet Isa came back to Beit al-Maqdis and invited the Jews to true religion of Allah. And for 3 years, he continued preaching to them the commandments of Allah from whatever was written in the book, whatever was revealed to the Prophet. For 3 years, he tried teaching them all of these things, and to show that he was the chosen one, there were some miracles from it. So everyone will recite a loud salawat, and I'll have a sip of water.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
So Prophet Isa, He was one of the accredited prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he was endowed with certain miracles. So he had some powers, some special powers, some miracles, and one of such miracles was the raising of the dead to life. We have heard and we have in the narrations that Imam Ali has woken the dead up. Prophet Isa, Imam Ali had the powers of the prophets. That power was, that miracle was shown by Prophet Isa at his time. That a person, when he has died, he was able to bring that person back to life again with the power that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had bestowed to him. So he had nothing special. He wasn't doing out of his own. It was the power given to him by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And under that command and the will of Allah, because not only was the power there, it was the will of Allah that he was able to wake that person from the death. Another miracle that he had was, if someone was born blind as a child, he was able to restore his eyesight. So when people saw that, obviously, if someone just lost his blindness, people think, oh, he just lost his blindness and he came back, it can't be a miracle. But people who are born blind and they have spent their entire life as blind, and everyone in the society, their family knows they're blind, when he restored the eyesight of those blind, and the people who had leprosy, which was, they were called lepers. It's a disease of the body and the fingers and all these things that happens, bad disease, I would say it. He was able to cure that. So when people saw all of these things, they had more faith in Prophet Isa, and they started coming towards the message. And he, along with his miracle, he also selected his disciples and apostles. So a few of Jews accepted the faith of Prophet Isa. After seeing these miracles, after seeing the commandments of Injil, and listening to Prophet Jesus, and not only listening, but how he was portraying himself, how he was doing, after having been convinced of his miracle, but the rest of them became his enemies. They became so much that they decided to kill him. From amongst the few people who had embraced the faith, so few people accepted the religion at the time, Prophet Isa selected 12 of them to be his disciples. Now, apostles and disciples is interchangeably used, but it's disciples who are the people who Prophet Jesus directly taught, and apostles were the people who followed. So, from the people who is following him, um, his followers or his learnings, among them, he picked 12 to be his disciples. From the apostles, he picks 12 disciples. These people remained with Prophet Isa all of the time and followed his teachings. Prophet Jesus delegated them his authority to preach the people the laws as laid down by Injil by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The so-called religious leaders of the people of Bani Israel and the Jews who had worldly gains. Now they were worried about all the money, all the gifts, all the fame that they had, that they say, okay, this prophethood of Prophet Isa and their influence and domination of the people would brought to an end, that all the gifts and all the importance that we get, okay, as a token of respect and love the people were giving. So what they did was they joined together and they opposed the preachings of Prophet Isa and tried to extinguish the light which Allah Almighty Subhanahu wa Ta'ala had kindled in the person of Prophet Isa, so that they might pass an easy and careful life. So they was, okay, we just don't want to change, we want to continue doing the bad things that we are doing, we want to do the things that we are and no one to question. So we want people to go against Prophet Isa. So what they did was they openly started refuting the prophethood of Prophet Jesus. They said, no, 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 he's not a prophet. They started calling him a magician. They called him, he's a skilled juggler, all of these things. So, however, Prophet Jesus remained undaunted and he stood like a firm rock against the dissidents and all these people, and he continued preaching the people to the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And for his safety, he considered Allah as his savior. So he had firm belief that Allah is his savior, and he was never frightened of his opponents. Whenever he went to preach the people with firm, his devotees and followers used to come to Baitul Maqdis on pilgrimage, and Prophet Isa then had an ample opportunity of holding big gatherings, big congregations to deliver his sermons. This enabled the large number of people to come to the fold of divine religion. So when these congregations happened, Prophet Isa, but the enmity against him was deeply rooted in the hearts of the bad people at the time. And they were helpless against the will of Allah. So they couldn't do anything, even though they started calling and slandering, calling him a magician and a skill judge, and nothing happened. They tried hard, but they failed. Okay, change slide. So this is the story about the Prophet Isa's miracles and preaching with his apostles. So there is a ayah in Quran in chapter 5, which is called Surah chapter Maida and Surah Maida, and it's called chapter the table. And when Isa prayed, Lord, send us a table full of food from heaven so that it will make a feast for us. This is when Prophet Jesus made a request. So the background is that in the Prophet times of difficulties, they remained patient and steadfast. So Prophet Isa, with the aid and assistance of 12 of his disciples who were dedicated to the preaching of Injil and who suffered at the hands of unbelievers, went from place to place. So they used to go from one town to another town to a village, inviting people towards monotheism, which is believing in one God, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the divine teachings of Injil. He used to stay a few days at each place and called upon the people to believe in the oneness of Allah, the resurrection and the day of judgment, paradise and hell. So all of the same things that we believe in, and to banish the evil desires. He used to tell the people, whatever evil desires that you are having, banish them, and clear your hearts of the sin, and listen to the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it is but natural that honest men respect a noble and pious man. So other honest men who listened to it, and when they saw the enthusiasm and about learning good things from him, then we saw that they started following Prophet Jesus. So, but whereas they were sitting, they asked to Prophet Isa, does your Lord not possess enough power to send food for us from the heavens? Now they believe, they had faith in Allah, but they've said the message in a wrong way. So they say, oh, does your Lord doesn't have the power to send us food on the table? Now the disciples said, what we mean is that while we get the food from the heaven, we become convinced in our heart in the truthfulness of your promise and become. So they just wanted calmness of their heart, satisfaction of their heart in that message. So at fast, Prophet Isa invoked Allah. When he made a dua, he made a prayer, he said, oh my Lord, send food from us, send food for us from the heaven, which may become the cause of our happiness and satisfaction, and by which the first and the last among us become happy, and that would serve a sign from you of your greatness, and you are the best provider of sustenance. The Almighty Allah granted his prayer and said, I'm sending food from the heavens, but if any one of you turns back to disbelief, I will make him suffer a torment that no one has ever suffered. So the Allah Almighty sent the food from the heaven, and everyone was benefited by his benevolence. Prophet Isa then addressed himself to his disciples and apostles, eat this food and be grateful to your Lord, the Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that he increases your means of sustenance further by showering upon you his blessings. So this was one of the miracles that also happened. So Prophet Isa, he spared no pain to invite Jews towards the right path for doing good and forbidding the evil. But But the Jews had overpowered them so strongly that despite the preaching of Prophet Isa, they remained stubborn and arrogant. And that was the mindset that the Jews had overpowered them so much that in spite of all listening to all of these good things, they remain arrogant, stubborn, and they did not wanted to let go of greed, usuri. So they were greedy, they had usuri, which is the interest and other things that they take. Um, and they continued showing their animosity towards Prophet Jesus. And eventually, what the time came that they were thought, okay, all our power is going to go away, the kingdom will go away, we have to do something about it. And they started blaming him that you're making the disruptions in the rank of people by bringing all of these things. Uh, and they remained content with their nefarious deeds. But they termed Prophet Isa's guidance towards Allah as a magical charm and accused him of witchcraft and wizardry. They said, oh, you are a witch, you're doing witchcraft, you're doing magic, you are a wizard. And they also claimed that Prophet Isa had become dissident of the religion of Prophet Musa. And he said, oh, look, he's gone away from the religion of Prophet Moses and he does not consider Saturday a sacred day. So eventually, all of these things happened and they decided that they are going to capture and kill Prophet Isa. So what they did was they started tracing and they sent it all of their spies and informers all over the place to trace Prophet Isa. At last, they caught hold of one of his apostles called Shamun al-Safa. And they interrogated him about Prophet Isa, but could not succeed in getting any information about his whereabouts. So then they came across another apostle, and his name was Yahuda or Judah in English. And this man was one of the apostles of Prophet. He was a follower, but he was very cunning and hypocrite. And he told the Jews the whereabouts of Prophet Isa and his benefactor and mentor. Even though he considered he was following him, he was benefiting from him, he was Prophet Jesus was his mentor, but he told. So Prophet Isa was busy in a cave and he was offering and he was worshipping to Allah in deep meditation, and the Jews caught hold of him and took him to crucify him. And their intention was, we will put him on a crucifix and we will nail his hands and feet on a cross. And they rejoined in thinking that they had achieved their purpose. So that's what they thought, and that's what they did. But when Allah wants to save something, what Allah wills, that is what happens. What happened was, as you see, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved Prophet Isa when he was caught, and he actually ascended to heaven. And in his place, Yahuda, whose face was turned to look like Jesus, was put on the cross and he was crucified. And he paid the ultimate punishment for the hypocrisy and telling the location of him. And according to us and according to the Prophet of Islam, Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, peace and blessings on our Prophet, then that when the 12th Imam, Imam Mehdi, Sallallahu Muhammad, when the Imam of a time will take place, when he will come, Prophet Isa, Prophet Jesus will descend on the earth from the heavens. From the skies, he will come and he will offer his prayer behind Imam Mehdi. And we have to remember that no matter what the oppressors, the tyrants, and the bad people want to do, sooner or later the culprit would have to meet his ill fate by suffering from unbearable torment. He would be punished. And that's what happened with Yehuda, the apostle who betrayed Prophet Isa. He was caught hold by the Jews, the same people he gave the information. He was shouting, I'm not Jesus, I'm not Jesus. And he said, yep, sure. And they crucified him. So this is the end of the story. We wait for Prophet Isa, but remember, he spent 3 years preaching. Till 30, he was in Egypt. 3 years, he came back to Beit al-Maqdis. He preached there, and now we are awaiting his arrival when the end of time comes, when Imam Mehdi will come to this world and rule, so would Prophet Jesus return to the world. May Allah accept our prayers. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. This is the end of the story. We'll take any questions if anyone has any questions.